Hello, how you doing?
Good evening, everybody.
Hey, Dr. Washington,
There we go.
I ain't seen you in a long time.
Hi
there,
Dr.
48
Dr.
hours is a long
Justin.
time.
How you doing?
There we go. All right, I'm getting everything situated here.
All right.
My brother Patrick, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty good, sister. How you doing?
Hanging in there.
All right, good.
Thank you guys so much. Had you met Lisa before?
Yes.
Lisa, Patrick, I think so. Yeah. But I know you haven't met Justin. Justin, this is Lisa. She's our librarian and part of the Messy Conversation team.
Hello,
Awesome,
Dr.
Lisa.
Washington. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you as well.
Here we go. Hi and welcome. We're going to start here in a minute or two as we let people in. Welcome to Messy Conversations. I think we'll get started now. Welcome to Messy Conversations. We are starting. Today is the first fall 2021 Messy Conversation. We've been going just a little bit over a year on these. We're so grateful for all of the panelists that we've had to illuminate important topics of anti-racism for us. And we have more for you all quarter. We are wanting people to know that we're recording these and they can be found on the Sakai site. So if you do not want to have your photo on, you can turn that off, but otherwise you can find the old Messy Conversations, the ones that have already happened. They're all located under Antioch UNIV period Messy Conversations, and you have to choose it as a Sakai site. So it invites you to choose it, but you have to click it and then choose it for yourself, just where you would choose a class site that you're teaching from, or a class site that you're a student on, or I'm sure you're familiar with Sakai. So thank you for being here. Also, we have some interesting topics ahead this quarter. We are hopeful that you can put any questions for our speakers that you have in the chat, and we will get to those after they've had the first little bit of conversation with each other. And so I would like to pass it over to Jacqueline or Elaine.
Hi, everyone. I just wanted to welcome everyone back on Indigenous Day. And this is going to be just a wonderful topic. I've been looking forward to it all summer during the planning, and I hope you enjoy it. I'm so ready. I hope you guys are ready to listen up, get some new details, and learn a lot of new information. And so I'll hand it over to Elaine. And thank you for everyone that came following the Black Student Union meeting, the Black Student Union announcement, and we'll see you at the next meeting. I'll post the information in the chat.
Thank you so much.
Take it, Elaine.
I have it. Thank you, Jacqueline. Welcome, everyone. It's great to see everyone again. I missed everyone, and we're so looking forward to today's discussion. It's just great to see people that we know that been a break, and we were very, very happy to say that our first for the presentation for the fall is on the historical Black colleges and universities, the legacy and history, what you didn't know about historically Black colleges. And we have our very own Patrick Jefferson, who's an alum from a historically Black college, as well as Justin Washington. So we welcome both of the gentlemen. And before we actually begin, I want to say that as we look at what is happening in our country today and this focus on education, from the 1619 Project to how race impacts education, the historically Black colleges has played a major role, not only in African-American history, but in American history, because of the activism, the dedication to education. And we are very proud to bring on these two gentlemen that both Dr. Jefferson is a graduate of Xavier, and Justin double. He's from Meharry. He did his medical work from Meharry, and he is a first-time guest. Dr. Jefferson, he is an adjunct professor here at Antioch, so he's a regular. And so we're very happy to have both of the gentlemen, and I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Jefferson.
Good evening, folks. How y'all doing? Good afternoon for you all. I'm in Texas, and it's evening for us. Thank you for having me back again. I hope something that we share today is at least a little bit interesting to you. And so I am a graduate of Xavier University in New Orleans. Sometimes you say Xavier University, people ask, Ohio, New Orleans. It's in New Orleans. It was founded in 1925 by Catherine Drexler. She was a rich heiress from Boston who came to New Orleans and started an institution to serve African Americans and Native Americans, because there's a history of African Americans and Native Americans kind of getting together and coinciding in New Orleans. If you've ever been around Mardi Gras or anything like that, there's a whole tradition of the Mardi Gras Indians and parades and all that stuff that attaches that. So I'm going to start with giving some facts about HBCUs. And there's a lot of, especially you hear the radio and different parts of the internet, there's a lot of misconceptions out there about historically Black institutions. So I'm going to start with that. Then I'm going to invite Dr. Washington to kind of jump in, and we'll talk about our experiences and what it is and what it isn't. But we're hoping that this will be driven by your questions. So anything that you want to know, please ask us. If it seems far-fetched, ask anyway. We'll answer anything. So what is an HBCU? HBCU is any higher education institution in the United States that was founded before 1964 with the express purpose to educating African Americans. Why were they needed? Is simply because we weren't allowed to go anywhere else. Many of these institutions came about after the Civil War. Most of them came about after the Civil War, and we weren't allowed to go anywhere else. I also work full-time at a historically Black institution, one of the oldest, Prairie View A&M University down here in Texas. There's the founding of the University of Texas. There was the founding of the Texas A&M System University, but I could not go there if I was alive back then. So in 1876, Prairie View was founded, and it was founded on the grounds of a real live plantation. A few years before Prairie View, it was called the Alta Vista Plantation. For anybody that's familiar with Texas history, General Sam Houston gave the land to his son-in-law. He's one of the ones that fought Mexico to get Texas. And his son-in-law marched 99 slaves from Alabama to Texas. mostly on foot. And they started this plantation. So right now, that's one of the things we're proud of, that this institution went from being a place of bondage to a place of higher education. There are approximately 100, a little more than that, approximately 100 historically Black institutions in America, spread over about 19 states. These states are mainly, primarily in the South, going from Virginia to Florida, all the way over to Texas. There's one actually in California that you may or may not know about. They're primarily 4-year institutions, but there are 2-year institutions. There are 4 medical schools that are considered historically Black institutions. I'm sure Justin will go into one of them when he talks about one of his alma maters. There's King Drew Medical School, which is in Los Angeles, right down on 105 where King Hospital is. It's they have a partnership. It's an independent medical school, but they also have a partnership with UCLA. There's Meharry, there's Morehouse, and there's Howard. Those are 4 medical schools. And some other things to know, about 50% of the Black teachers in America came out of HBCUs. About 70% of dentists, Black dentists in America, came out of HBCUs. Like my alma mater, Xavier, which I'm proud of, is #1, and it's a campus of maybe 3,300 students, maybe 35 at this point. They put more African Americans in the medical school than any other school in the nation by far, and they've done that for the last 35 years or so. Howard has the most Black PhDs in America. 75% of African Americans with a PhD did their undergraduate work at HBCUs. 20% of HBCUs account for 20% of the Black undergraduate students, but account for 40% of the bachelor's degrees in America. And so once again, 20% of the enrollment, but 40% of the bachelor degrees. So few misconceptions, and I'll be quiet, let Justin jump in. One of the biggest misconceptions I hear, especially on maybe right-leaning radio or television, is that, they have schools that only they can go to. Like HBCUs are only for African Americans. That is the biggest joke. You walk on these campuses right now, and I work with students every day. We're primarily probably about 65% African American, but we have Caucasian students, we have Latino, Hispanic students, we have Asian students. We have a huge international program, students from Brazil, anywhere, Europe, Brazil. I mean, we have a thriving, diverse population. And in some states, some historical Black institutions have more white students, African American students at this point. That HBCUs do not offer the quality of education that you can get other places. And that goes into a trope that, if it has something to do with African Americans, it's lower quality than other institutions. That's not true. I just read out some stats for you. Much of the success we have in our community, most of these people are at least do their undergraduate work at historically Black institutions. We don't all walk around these schools with dashikis on, throwing up our fists saying kill whitey all day. That's not what it is. These are regular institutions. We have students that complain about their financial aid, it takes too long. They complain about they don't like their math classes. The students get dismissed, they enroll, it's everything that goes on at a normal institution goes on here. And we'll touch on this a little bit later. There's this thing people say, well, if you go to HBCU, it's mostly Black people, you're not going to be prepared for the real world. Every HBCU in America is in America. You cannot be prepared for the real America living in America. So those are a few things I just want to kind of throw out there, and then we'll start a conversation from there. So Dr. Washington, why don't you jump in?
Thank you, Dr. Jefferson. I fully agree with everything that you said about HBCUs. I mean, it was a really transformative experience. And when you're talking about the history, many people may not realize, my undergrad was at Hampton University. And for Blacks, if we remember the Emancipation Proclamation with Abraham Lincoln, that's what freed the slaves in 1862 and said, okay, by January 1863, we're going to free the slaves. that very first reading of that Emancipation Proclamation was at Hampton University. So on the grounds of the school. And in 1868, they actually founded that school there just so that Blacks can have a place to go. They said, now that they're free, we want to educate them. And like you said, at that time, we couldn't go anywhere else. We didn't have that right. So, I'm happy to be a part of this panel to kind of discuss those, misconceptions that it's not the same quality school and different reasons why we chose to go there. And for me, coming out of, I'm originally from New York, going to an HBCU was a great stepping stone. Like I said, when I said transformative, it not only helped you academically, but also that maturity level and that nurturing that you may not get from other institutions. So that's a key part. And that's also why with other ethnic groups nowadays, they're also looking to that HBCU because it's more of a holistic educational experience versus you're just in a lecture hall, 500 students, you don't know who anybody is. The professor just gives assignments, but they don't take that time to know the student, learn about their background, or, they could be a first generation student, and they might have other factors why they may not succeed. HBCUs typically go that extra mile to ensure that their students graduate.
When you talk about expectations, what was the expound on that a little bit more? Because we hear that a lot. And I think in one of the previous conversations, messy conversation I had, I talked about expectation we have with students. So what did that look like for you as far as expectations?
Oh, at Hampton University, it was totally different. I mean, it was more to it than, okay, you had to attend class and just get good grades. It was, you have to attend class, you have to be on time. You can't come to class in your night clothes and, different rags or different hats or different things on your head. You had to come professional every day, all the time, because their philosophy was, imagine you're a 17, 18-year-old kid, you're coming out of high school where you didn't have any responsibility. We need to make sure that you can make that transition from academia to the Fortune 500 world and be prepared, not only to be competent in your education and your aptitude, but also you have to dress the part, look the part, and, fit in. So they told us more about how to actually live as an adult versus, just get good grades and you'll be fine.
I think for me, my freshman advisor, because I played 2 seasons of football at another place and transferred over. So my first advisor I had there, his name was Royal Sanders. He was a biology instructor. And I remember I wanted to drop a class because I wasn't doing too good. I didn't study a lick. That's why I didn't do too good in the class. So it was midterms. And I'm like, I don't want to drop the class. Well, you can't drop a class. And let me put this caveat. Xavier's a smaller private university, so some different things can be done. But you can't drop a class without your advisor's signature. You just couldn't go to the registrar's office. I don't want this class, I want to drop it. So I had to go to Dr. Sanders' office and say, I want to drop this class. And he stopped what he's doing. He's explaining to me why you're going to drop this class. And he said, well, I came up with whatever excuse. And he put his head out the door and yelled down the hall to Dr. Bowen, that's who it was. Dr. Bowen, could you come here for a minute? Why isn't Patrick doing good in your class? And Dr. Bowen told me and him why I wouldn't do good in his class. And he slid that paper back over to his office. He said, okay, you will come to my office every week and let me know what you're studying for that week's test, blah, blah, blah. And that's what when we say kind of accountability, the level of interest, that personal touch that they would have and expectation, because you knew everyone's name, all the professors knew who you were, and I don't know how they do it because I can't remember names to save my life. But that expectation that you will be in class, it's no skipping class. If you miss class, they're asking your friends because they know who you hang around with. They pay attention. Where is so-and-so? I haven't seen them in class for 2 days now, 2 class sessions. What are they doing? To the point that some of our professors, they would come to your dorm and look for you. And so it was kind of an understood thing, like, no, you getting up and going to class. And as Justin said, you just don't drag into class because they would have a conversation with you afterwards, like, why are you coming to my class dressed like this? And it was a whole thing. There was a bunch of aunties and uncles that took care of you. And it was not all Black aunties, because if you look at the number of faculty positions in the United States, especially in certain sciences and math, there's not a lot of African American people that have those degrees. So it's a very, very diverse workforce that there. The faculty ranks is very, very diverse, but it was something that was shared by everyone, whether it was African American, whether it's Latino, whether it's Asian, whether it's Caucasian. It was something that was expected from everyone across the campus, how you would hold students accountable, but how you would love them and hold them accountable. So what was your motivation to go to HBCU, Justin?
It's funny. The honest answer is, growing up in the 80s and 90s and, watching the Cosby Show and a different world, that's the honest answer. Because when you saw it, shows like that, and we don't really have shows like that on television now, it showed Black excellence and it seemed like it was a myth. You watch those shows like, this really can't be like it is. But then you go and visit those campuses and you see a lot of people that look like you. And I knew I wanted to be a doctor. And you saw a bunch of people that were actually, taking those classes and moving in that direction. And I said, you know what, I can see myself here. Because like I said, in New York, we had NYU, we had a lot of state schools. And, we had to visit those campuses as a part of our high school, going, matriculation. But it was just like a 10,000, 20,000 students where you just basically feel like a number on campus. But when you go to, I visited Hampton, and Hampton was like Xavier. We had about 3,600 students, maybe 3,800 total. And you basically understand your commitment, your group, your biology department, everybody by name. The teachers know you by name. And I said that was important to me, where I didn't want to just feel like a number in a class. I wanted to be a part, of the school. I wanted to feel like they actually cared that I was there.
Well, I mean, similar, Justin and I are around the same age, and, A Different World had an impression on me. As I said, I had a football scholarship and I left and went to Xavier, and I went looking for Lisa Bonet because that's what I saw in A Different World. But it was, and I would like to say it was because I was purposeful and planned on it, but it was because I was looking to transfer and they had a short application and I applied there and got in and went there. I think that was the best decision. And just, they say, God looks after little kids and fools. Well, I wasn't little kids, but he looked after me. And I ended up at Xavier, which is the best thing that I've ever done. Before you went, Justin, did you hear any negativity or discouragement about going to an HBCU?
So from some people I did, because especially in the medical field, I would do externs at hospitals, and, when you mention it, and it's not so much necessarily the negativity, it was like, yeah, but you might want to consider these other schools, where they really didn't understand the value of it. You know what I'm saying? So for me, that really was it. But more so from family groups and friends, it was like, these are the certain HBCs that you can go to because they have a track record of excellence. When you look at your Hamptons, your Xaviers, your Morehouse, Spelman, Howard, it's like those are the schools that produced at that particular time, like some of the most prominent African Americans in the entire country, or let alone the world. So it was just like, no, okay, if you're going to go, this is where you're going to go, because I know what you're trying to do. And I know that it'll give you that preparation to move forward. And with like HBCUs, one thing, it told us that responsibility for community. And at other schools, imagine when you're just a number, you kind of don't feel that push. But going to Hampton, it was like, yes, you're going to get this degree and you're going to make it easier for the next person coming behind you, because you need to be that example as all these other people before you are doing. So you sort of feel like you're a part of that African-American culture of, you're going to be successful and help that next one.
Yeah. A couple of things with that. And number one, as I said before, HBCUs like any other institution, and there are levels to HBCUs. I mean, they're just and sometimes just like as a culture, we get kind of all lumped together. A black man's a black man's a black man's a black man. We're all the same thing, which is not true. Similar things for HBCUs. There are levels to it. There are open access institutions where your son, your nephew, your niece, your daughter, we need to get them in school somewhere. because they barely slide out of high school. That's open enrollment institutions you can kind of get them into, and they'll work with that, your son or daughter, niece, nephew, whatever. But also there's some higher echelon schools that, I mean, it's the ones you've heard of. Most people have heard of Morehouse. Most people have heard of Spelman. A lot of people have heard of Hampton. A lot of people have heard of Xavier. Everybody's heard of Howard, especially now with the vice president. So those are some of the more higher echelon schools, but it's broken down by, you know, levels and ranks and everything else. And so they're not all the same thing. What was the second thing you was to discuss, Justin? I got off track.
Your responsibility to community.
Oh yeah, and that's the thing I want to touch on. We've all heard or seen someone say the whole speech at freshman year, you know, look to your left, look to your right, someone's not going to be there. My president at the time, Dr. Norman Francis, he said, look to your left, look to your right. It's your responsibility to make sure that person is sitting next to you when you graduate. And that sense of community is, I think, what really kind of made an impression on me, a lifelong impression on me, because it was drilled into us. You were in competition to make good grades, but your competition was that test or that quiz or that course. You were not competing with the person next to you. So where I heard some of my friends that went to different schools talking about, you know, people go and they steal the books and they'll tear pages out and everybody's trying. Like your thing was everybody in the group, we all need to make an A. So if I had a old quiz that I came across, now you go to the library around midterms and you just kind of yell out, okay, who has, you know, biology 13, you know, 15? I got a quiz, I got an old test, I got this, I got that. Come study, even people you don't know, you don't really hang out with, come study with us. We got it next week. Right. It was a sense of community that everybody had to make it. You don't leave anybody behind. And I was one of those, see, I wasn't like Justin. See, I wasn't, you know, very bright going in. I didn't make very good grades going in. I really did. I just was not prepared for college. I mean, I did decent high school. I never studied a day in my life in high school. I just kind of went through. And so I struggled a lot when I went there. And one of the things I struggled with was being in an institution where it was all these Black kids and they were all brilliant. And seeing that they were, and I'm the first person in my family to go to school, but I had classmates who not only were their mother and father college graduates, their grandparents were college graduates, you know, as African Americans. Not only were they doctors, they were head of surgery at whatever major institution. They were, you know, the head of the faculty at whatever university. They were mayors, they were this, they were that. And so a lot of these kids came and they had it together. And I struggled and like, man, so, you know, we would take a test and everybody's getting their test back. Oh, I made a 98. Oh, I made a 96. Oh, I did this, I missed one. I would take my quiz and just kind of put it in my backpack. We're not talking about that. And there were people in my class that noticed that and said, man, come study with us. You need to come study with us. And there were some young ladies in some of my classes, I thought they liked me. No, they were just trying to make sure that I did better. They say, no, you go come have dinner with us because we go study afterwards. And I learned how to study because we looked out for each other. We noticed who was failing, who was falling behind, and somebody would grab you. And you didn't have to be ashamed about it. They just kind of helped you kind of get through.
Yeah. PG, I'm going to piggyback on what you just said right there. That was the reason why for dental school, I went to Meharry Medical College. When I was applying, I had just finished a master's degree and I actually got into 4 schools. And I talked to my friends that were at different schools and they were saying how cutthroat it was, how it was dog eat dog. Nobody really cared. They were just like, you were there like a man on an island. But the difference when I got to Meharry was 100% of my classmates graduated, 100% of them specialized in whatever they wanted to, because it was that. You're not leaving anybody behind. We all are going to be a doctor come, you know, heck or high water. Nobody's being left behind. I had never experienced or heard of anything like that, especially in the medical profession, because everybody needs to match. You got to try to figure it out. You got to try to be the one going to this particular program. But it was like when it came to board time, the entire class got together, studied every time for part 1 and part 2 of the boards. And I never heard that at any other institution. because the goal was we all needed to finish. So I think that that's a key difference in HBCUs, or that was my experience.
How did it set you up as far as moving into the career field? And you're a dentist, of course, but how did it, because, you know, some people say, well, it won't prepare you to, you know, be competent in different careers. And how have you struggled or anything like that?
Oh, listen, that's a great question. So I got accepted, matched to my first choice, University of Texas. University of Texas is top 5 residency programs in the entire country, period. We had $1 million per month budget for whatever we wanted to do, and we had to learn. And I went to Meharry and was selected first choice over all the people from any other school that wanted to go to that institution. It taught us not only, again, that resiliency. Yes, you have to achieve and you have to perform, because you need to be the top, because you're competing against people who already think that you're less than them. But when you go to these interviews, you show what you can do and you outwork everybody else. And they teach you how to do that too. And, you know, both sides of the coin, when you go to, you know, when I went to Meharry, we didn't have $1 million per month budget on supplies and different things. But they taught you, whether you're performing medical care in a rural environment in the middle of nowhere, or if you're at, you know, top 1 institutions in the country, you learn, you know how to work, you know how to perform, you know how to handle patient care, because especially one thing that I've noticed, a lot of people might be competent academically, but they do not have excellent bedside manner. And that's a problem in my opinion. But they teach us those kind of things, that everyone matters. So, I mean, I felt like I was almost over-prepared when I got to the residency part and shined, and, you know, we did that. I was in a general practice residency, and one of my classmates was also at University of Texas. We both got highest awards and were recognized by both of our programs the same year that we were there, out of everybody else. So that spoke to the level of training that we got at Meharry compared to everybody else, and showed that we actually were competent and prepared.
Yeah, I think for me, it was, and we'll just wrap it up, let we start asking questions. Xavier had us, it was borderline arrogant.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we're Xavier Rice. We can do anything. We're better than everybody. Nobody can beat us. And I'm happy because of that, because just anybody, just being an adult, period, this adulting period, and you're trying to get into a career, it's tough, it's hard, but they poured so much into us, and they had us, it's like a programming almost. We're Xavier Rice, we can do anything. So any situation you walk in, you know, you're going to be the best in the room. That's the expectation they had for us. You're going to be the best in the room no matter where you walk in. And, you know, the conversations we had on campus, the kind of training they got us, it wasn't really overt as far as, you know, having pride in yourself and your culture. It wasn't very overt. And, you know, in a certain class you take, you discuss it and you talk about it, but it was just in the everyday things, because you learn to be your authentic self. So if you're in the chess club was full of Black kids like you, so you didn't have to feel weird. If you're in the anime comic book club was Black kids like you, so you didn't have to feel weird. If you're into this, so you could be your entire self and just kind of relax and take your mask off and don't have to kind of put on any kind of airs. And you didn't have to represent, you know, being the only one in class, represent all Black people. You can just represent yourself and be yourself, because whatever little quirk or weird little habit you got, somebody else on campus got it too, and y'all hang out together. And so I think that was a big thing. But moving into the career field, again, you know, Xavier puts more African Americans into medical school than anywhere else, to the point where medical schools fly to New Orleans to have interviews at Xavier instead of Xavier Rice flying to med school for interviews, because they put so many people in. So I think for me, that's kind of carried with me through all my positions and all the kind of struggles I have. Like, this is kind of what we do. Even when I'm struggling, I call my friends that I graduated with, my lifelong friends, like, man, I'm struggling. And they like, man, do what we do. This is what we do, you know, and that's the kind of conversation. And last question I have for Justin before we open up for question is, how has that experience impacted your world outlook, your worldview, how you deal with people in general, and your volunteerism and different things like that?
I mean, you know, coming from, you know, my background growing up in New York, I didn't, you know, my family was blue collar working class, you know, go to work, come home. The focus was really on the family. It wasn't on the community. When you went to Hampton, they really showed you your place in society. And, you know, we discussed different issues that were going on, and it also offered solutions. So it made us concerned about the welfare of other people. And I didn't realize that until I, you know, became an adult, became a father, and it was like, wait a minute, it's more to life than just making sure that, you know, I'm financially set, my kids are doing well. It made me think that I need to do this same thing for the community. And after I, you know, joined a lot of organizations, it really said, okay, you need to be able to be there for your family, but also mentor and show, you know, young people that, you know, no matter where their background is from, that they can achieve whatever it is they want to achieve. You don't have to be a doctor. If you're going to be the postman, you got to be the best at whatever it is that you're going to do. And it gave me that sense of pride. So it's like, so I said, okay, for my own kids, you guys need to start now and understanding your place in the community, and you guys need to get involved. So hopefully that you know, that posture that you give off, it rubs off on those around you and your family, so that they understand it's not just about you. When they say that you're a part of something that's larger than yourself, going to an HBCU, it made me feel that way. So I needed to give that to other people.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And full disclosure, Dr. Washington and I are in the same volunteer organization together, 100 Black men of Metro Houston. And just, I credit, you know, my parents, of course, but my experience at Xavier, because it was kind of instilled with us. It's bigger, like you said, it's bigger than you. You're part of this community, and the sense of responsibility. And I had a professor that would say, we don't care if it's not fair. You have been given an opportunity, you have a responsibility, you lift everyone up, and you always reach back and you pull someone up. It doesn't matter. And once you pull someone up, you take your place on the wall that somebody can stand on your shoulders and go to the next thing. And that legacy, I think, is a theme throughout every HBCU that I've went to. And I know people that I've been around or I visited, it's a theme. And and to the point where if you're out somewhere, you're sitting in the airport and somebody walks by and they have a Southern University shirt on, and I see it, I say, hey, you went to Southern? I went to Xavier. Or you see somebody with FAMU shirt on, say, you know, Florida A&M University. Oh, you went to FAMU? I went to Xavier. And it's an instant conversation. It's an instant camaraderie. And you automatically start talking to that person. It's just what it is, no matter what. I mean, we tease each other. I mean, I give Dr. Washington grief all the time that he went to the second best HBCU in the country. And because not everybody could get in Xavier. We just didn't have room for everybody. So he had to go to Hampton. I mean, it's better than not going to school. I mean, he had to go somewhere. But we give each other grief like that all the time, but it's an instant, it's like brothers and sisters. You meet somebody that's automatically your brother and sister because it's that sense of community. So we want to open it up with questions. Anybody want any questions whatsoever? Anything?
Patrick, I'll be trying to field questions that have shown up in the chat.
All right.
A couple for you so far. And then just a reminder to everyone, if you want to join into this conversation, just put your questions in the chat and then we will call on you to present those. A few minutes ago, Patrick, you started to talk some about what's the word I'm looking for? Oh, affinity groups on campus. And Jacqueline had a question about that. Jacqueline?
I just had a question about knowing how HBCUs in direct relationship to Black Student Union and knowing that everything that was instilled in HBCU as a process is definitely carries over to the organization of BSU. And I know there's other affinity groups out there when it comes to our campuses, our HBCU campuses. And I was wondering if you could talk about those a little bit, what they offer, and if you were involved and how you were involved in which ones you belong to.
I will let Justin Washington jump into that. He can speak to that.
All right. Well, I'll talk about a couple. So there was a student leadership program. So basically it was a breeding ground to train students that wanted to go into, if you wanted to be president of your class, secretary, or whatever. It basically taught you how to have those leadership roles. Also the Greek life, which is, very instrumental in all schools, not just HBCUs, which I was a part of. And you basically find a group that really resonates with who you are as a person and what your aspirations are. So that was something that we saw. And, one thing that you talked about with the Black Student Union, well, I'll say this, we had them, it was so interesting. We had regional groups. So being that I was from New York, we had a New York young alumni group. They had one for Texas. So you basically would do things to bring that camaraderie with the region that you were in. Because regionally, we might listen to different music, food, culture, clothing, different things like that. So it would have different affinity groups based on that to basically give you a community within a community, if that makes any sense.
So Justin is a member of what?
Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated is my organization.
I think she was getting at the Greek life, and it Greek life, and for African American, it's 9 of them. It's called Divine 9. It's a little different. You are active for your entire life. You just don't kind of do in your college, and you're active. You go from undergraduate to hopefully grad chapter, and you do things for you. It's a service organization for your entire life. Because through the history of many of these organizations, because so few of us were graduating, it was another way to connect you to other like-minded individuals at a certain education level, so you can have a connection. Because when you walked into the business world, there was nobody else around, so you had to have somebody somewhere that you can connect to, that you could, look to or have some connection with to kind of help you make it through. Because in some of these cases, it was life and death. When you travel different places, you can find someone that you can kind of connect with, or if you're in a business world, or if you're just out and about in general with your family, that was a way to keep you safe in some respects. But they are a lifetime thing, and many people are more active after they graduate undergraduate than they were in undergraduate.
Thank you both for that, and thank you, Jacqueline, for the question. A question just came in from Katie. She's asking, and you're both just started to touch on this a little bit more, about community outreach programs that operate through HBCUs. You want to ask your question, Katie?
Yeah. Well, I'm wondering, because you both spoke a lot about the camaraderie within the universities, and I'm wondering if there is that, if there are programs where you kind of spread that love out into the community and show more of like the, I guess, like the impoverished neighborhoods, like high schools, or I said grade schools too, just so like the kiddos can see like, oh, look, there are extremely successful humans that look like I do, and I have a chance to do this too, and like what that work looks like for you.
Because I work in higher ed, we do that a lot, quite a bit, and I work at Prairie View A&M, we're agricultural mechanical school also. So we not only work in Houston in those urban high schools, we also do a lot in very rural areas, a lot of outreach. And that's part of it, a lot of working with young people. We have a huge FFA conference up here every year, huge. And it's always interesting. So you get young Caucasian kids walking around like, oh my God, this is really cool. I didn't think it was like this. Because Prairie View has one of the most beautiful camps you ever want to see. And they like, wow, this is an HBCU. I thought it was something different. So that's always good. One of the things that, the challenge, because you're all in California, well, most of you are in California, because we're so far from, a traditional HBCU besides King Drew in California. A lot of California kids don't grow up near and around, so they don't see it for themselves. And so a lot of them don't make that an option. Being in the South, being the East Coast, you're kind of near one of the schools. You kind of, you know it's over there, you know it's over here, somebody has graduated. So it's not as unfamiliar. The challenge we have is, like many things that's associated, that has the term African-American in it. School counselors, school administrators, teachers dissuade students, even parents dissuade students from attending or even applying. And this whole notion that if it's Black, it's less than. And we get a lot of parents that have internalized issues with white supremacy, or they look and say, oh yeah, it's something Black, it has to be less than. And so you need to go to this school if you want to be successful. And so I think that's the biggest challenge, even with outreach. It just some stuff that we face. And truth be told, to be 100% honest, I mean, I work on a beautiful campus, but this campus is nothing like UT's, University of Texas campus, and they were started around the same time. And so sometimes you go to different places and the facilities are not at the same level. And there's the truth about it. For Prairie View, there was when A&M, Texas A&M, University of Texas and Prairie View were founded, there was an endowment started back in the late 1800s called the Endowment of the First Class. And every year, some of that money should have went to Prairie View, should have went to UT and A&M. For about 100 years or so, A&M got their money, UT got their money. They gave no money to PV because for about 100-something years, the people in state legislature tried to shut it down from the inception. We opened our doors in 1876 for ex-slaves. There's people in legislature that wasn't too happy about that. Why do those people need anything? We don't want to have anything. And so it was a fight. And so monies were not given to these institutions. And so up until maybe, the mid 80s, none of that money, billions of dollars in endowment, were not flowing to the institution. So students were walking to class through paths. So when it rained, their feet would get muddy, that things were falling apart. And it wasn't until some lawsuits were happened that this campus started getting built up. And because most of these colleges and universities were in the South, it was what happened in Texas was not strange. Many people, state legislatures tried to starve these schools out. We're not going to give you money. We're not going to properly fund you. And so your facility is going to fall apart. You're not going to look good. So it wasn't as appealing to go to some of these institutions as other, institutions. If you look at, one public institution that's PWI in the state, and another one that's HBCU, there's a marked difference there. Now these kids on this campus got some pretty nice facilities. Now I tell you that, I'm a little jealous.
Very good. I had a question, and then I see a few other questions that come in. I'll get to those in just a second. It's I don't know the right word. It's inspiring to hear you guys talk about the role of HBCUs and for you and for the Black community. And I wonder if there are other progressive institutions, for instance, like Antioch and those of that ilk. Are there lessons that are exportable from the HBCU experience that these progressive institutions could pick up on and implement, or is it specific to?
I think I say yes, but I think we have to move off the dime of being our traditional roles. So I'm a faculty member, I don't do this. I'm a faculty member, I don't do that. As opposed to, yeah, you're a faculty member, but someone's only been in class, you didn't give them a call. And the faculty took upon themselves other responsibilities and just not like, well, I'm Dr. Jefferson, I'm not doing that, I'm not doing this, and this is where I stand. And send them down to student affairs, let them do that. I don't do that. I think rethinking the roles that we take as far as in the lives of students, I think that was the main thing I would say as working in both traditional institutions and HBCU. Faculty take their roles a little bit further. And of course, I mean, there are world-class researchers here and world-class teachers here, but they do extra things. You may see Dr. Brown as one of our big-time biologists on campus, but Dr. Brown is an advisor of a club, and his club, they go all over the world and doing stuff. And so if you building a personal relationship with one of these top researchers in the world, so your expectations that, oh yeah, I'm going to be like Dr. Brown, and when he takes an interest in you, he's going to make sure he pushes you. And so I think that is the difference. And I think I've talked about this before, the expectations of all students that you will succeed, period. We don't let you slide. It wasn't ever, we're going to dumb down the curriculum, we're going to kind of let standards slide. No, you are going to meet standards, period. They helped you do it, but man, they was on our heads as far as academic goes. And the expectation and the belief, the core internal belief that these little Black kids are smarter than anybody else, are just as smart as anybody else. I think that's the difference. They didn't just say that, they believed that with every ounce of their being. This little Black boy from Houston, Texas, you're smart, and I'm gonna make you be smart. I'm going to make you do it no matter what you think about yourself. And you kind of get into that mindset. I think that is the lesson to be learned, that you have to really, 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 really believe that every individual student is worth it.
Dr. Washington, would you like to add anything to it?
Sure. I was basically going to second what PJ said, because I'll take it from the dental school perspective down. When I came to school, the professors made sure that we understood that whoever you want to be in life, that it's possible, and whatever they had to do to make sure that you got there is what they were willing to do. I've had professors that would take their time and stay late after school to help people study for board exams, because they know historically across the nation, certain areas were difficult for all students, not just Black students. But they would say, okay, if I was the gross anatomy professor or the microbiology professor, they would make sure that they stayed after. They would actually go and do the test revisions with the makers of the exam, and they would come back like they don't have the questions or the answers, but they were saying these are the topics that most kids across the nation have issues with. We're going to set up extra study sessions to make sure that we don't falter where everyone else falters. That's what PJ's talking about, that going above and beyond when other people might not look at it the same way. I had a friend that went to a Ivy League school that was in the Northeast. And he said that the professor would constantly tell him that, oh yeah, your answer is elementary, and wouldn't really expound or on whatever the topic was that he was talking about. So he said he never felt that he was right, or that he had to work twice as hard to just compete. Versus at the HBCUs, we never had to experience the professors basically not telling us that we were good enough. It was like, you're here, so you're good enough. And we're going to make sure that wherever you want to go after this, it's possible. So I think what PJ said hit it right on the head, that it's just that extra level of concern beyond just lecturing and that's it, but making themselves available to the students and making sure that the resources are there for all students. Because as we know in academia, a lot of the professors teach to the middle of the class. You might have some that might not get it, and you have those super high achievers, but you wanted to make sure that everybody, makes whatever their goal is. And I think that really is the key.
And I want to kind of just make sure we balance stuff out. there's plenty of students that fail out, that don't do well and fail out. I mean, it's not necessarily the land of milk and honey. Like everybody walks in, we're gonna walk out. Oh my God.
Yeah.
No, plenty of people struggle, have issues, and have problems. Not every professor cares the
As
same
everywhere.
level. Like we have a math department here that sends students through buzzsaws. I mean, it's brutal. So it's like I said, we have it's an American higher education institution. We have a lot of the same trappings of any other American higher education institution, except we have some things to kind of mitigate some of the stuff that goes on. So I want to make sure we balance that out.
Fair enough. A good segue would be to Asa. Asa has a question about HBCU pedagogical practice. Want to ask your question, Asa?
Sure, thank you. And thanks, Dr. Jefferson and Dr. Washington for this conversation. Yeah, I was just wondering more about, so the talk about like standards and kind of, you know, producing scholars who are at the levels of other institutions or above them. But I was wondering if there are differences in the approaches, like, you know, within other institutions, there's been a lot of talk about like decolonizing syllabi, stuff like that. And so I'm wondering if you noticed any major differences in those kind of approaches at HBCUs versus working in non-HBCUs.
Well, I think there are good educational practices that need to be applied everywhere. There are some, you know, courses here that I go walk in, I grimace like, ooh, please stop doing that, you know. But I think what happens is the attitude that number one, you meet students where they are, and you kind of bring them forward. And then going to looking at the materials, you know, the books that we are brought in, the authors that are brought in, giving historical context to the material so it's more interesting. I mean, there's not a debate on campus about critical race theory, for example. It just, you know, once again, it's not that it's not as overt as you would think it is. It's subtle. It's just but it's subtle. But at the end of the day, I mean, chemistry is chemistry. Biology is biology. Psych is psych. So this is not a very good answer, but I'm trying. But I think it's more. It comes back to this culture. I don't think it's necessarily pedagogy. Like we do have a lot more inclusive practices on campus as far as what materials are brought into the classroom and what topics are covered. But I think it's more subtle than that. And I think it's a lot of those outside of the classroom things that are academic related, but not necessarily core academics. Like, for example, we have Toni Morrison is our, Nikki Giovanni, if you know who Nikki Giovanni is, she's our writer in residence on campus. And so if you into literature and writing and English, that's our writer in residence. That's huge for us. But on top of that, we're gonna have Toni Morrison here at the same time. And so you have two of those ladies at the same time as a part of the same, you know, writing program. And so when you think about, yeah, I gotta take this literature course, oh my God. But part of your literature course, Toni Morrison's gonna be in there one day, and then next week, Nikki Giovanni is gonna be in there. That kind of wakes it up a little bit. I mean, because these are, you know, it's things like that. It's that co-curricular and curricular things that kind of flow together that make it worthwhile. Like, you know, where you have political science, but you have students organizing, because Waller County, where we were, did the redistricting, and they split Prairie View, the campus, in half to water down the voting power. And so that makes your political science class a little more interesting, because the students here actually one that filed a lawsuit about that. And so it's that kind of stuff, I think, more than anything. And I know it's a long, convoluted answer, but hope you got some out of it.
I'm conscious of our time. Lisa has a question, and then there's Niku. I want to finish with Niku's question. Lisa was asking about HBCUs as a sort of cultural haven for the Black community. Lisa, your question?
Yeah, right. Is there currently tension around HBCUs remaining Black as intellectual cultural community havens for Black students? I know here in California, Mills College, which is a women's college, has some financial issues, and they were talking about making it co-gender, and women there and alums were not interested at all in admitting males, and it really made them unhappy and stressed them out because they intentionally went there because they wanted that space. And I'm curious if there's a similar conversation happening around HBCUs.
I'll probably say over the past couple of years, we've seen that shift in more people wanting to go to HBCUs for that inclusiveness, especially with the vice president being from Howard and different things like that, and with the last administration. So I would definitely say yes, but I think that it also was just an overall push towards academia in general, because they saw that we kind of need an education and we need to take it to that next level, wherever that was. And it was okay. I wanted to feel more comfortable wherever that location, whatever school it was. So I want to say, especially in Howard, when I was looking at the stats, it's probably been a 3-fold increase in applications over the last 2 years since COVID. So I think that, with the culture of the climate, the way that things were, I think that actually helped push people toward that, because that's one thing that you don't really want to have to fight about. That you don't want to have to fight about racial issues or any kind of tension or anything like that. All kids just basically want to learn. They want to study. They don't want to have the things that we hear on the news kind of play in or take a part of or take captive your educational opportunity. So I would say yes, it's been a shift toward that over the last couple of years.
But there's always been a fight, and continues to be a fight, about questioning the relevance of these schools. It always has been. And there's never a question of you have a PWI and you have a HBCU in the same city. It's always a question of, why do we need this one? Close this one, because they can go to this one over here now. It's never, let's close the PWI and send all the kids over to the HBCU. It's never that conversation. The fight is now, they're a little more subtle with it. Before it was, why are we giving them folks our resources? Now it's, oh, well, resources are tight, we need to consolidate. In certain states, like for example, Louisiana, there's a Southern University system, and there's the Louisiana State University system. LSU and Southern University are the big flagship schools. And it's interesting, you go to Baton Rouge on a Saturday, you want to see where the racial divide is. You got Southern's playing a football game, LSU playing a football game. The city is empty, and you go look at the crowds of each one. And there was a big push because the state legislature was like, well, we don't need two systems. We can just fold this one, the LSU system. And the alumni, Southern University alumni had a fit, so they kind of stopped that. But it's always under attack. I told you about how they was trying to shut down Prairie View for 25 years. So there's always an attack, but as Justin said, I think starting back with the big increase started coming, during President Obama administration, and then it skyrocketed during the last administration when everything just kind of came out because, everybody, the sentiment has always been there, but they got permission to be their real selves. And so walking across on campus, it was just uncomfortable. And so the enrollment started going up quite a bit at HBCUs all around the country. And a lot of people, Caucasian students, Latin students, Hispanic, Latino students, Asian students, they start looking around and like, man, I don't want to be a part of this. And they start investigating and realize like, ooh, I really like that. I mean, because we are very welcoming people. Like, if you coming in, come on in, we're going to have fun together. That's just a part of the culture. And so they come and like, oh, I'm not going to get ran out of here. Oh, people are going to treat me nice. Oh, I can do this. I can do this. I can do this. And the population kind of keeps growing, and people are making a choice now. Non-Blacks are making a choice. Yeah, that's where I want to go, because it was really cool at that campus. And once you get someplace that, especially kids, once you realize somebody care, the other stuff goes out the window. And this is places that generally people kind of care a little bit more, it seems like. And so the population is growing because of that. But there's always elements trying to shut these places down. Always, always, always. And some of them are not so subtle about it. They will say, yeah, we don't think y'all should exist.
And PJ, I think that you said something clear. Like, I think a lot of people think HBCUs are, we exclude people, or, we don't want it to be diverse. They're HBCUs just because historically why those schools were founded. But they're really diverse, especially over the last 10 years, that you have a lot of different ethnic groups that attend these schools and they thrive there and they are accepted and they like the culture. So I think that's also a big misconception.
Which takes us to Niku's question, and if we could, and then we'll wrap up after that. Niku.
Thank you everyone for being here with me, and thank you for inviting me. First, I want to start with a comment, and then I want to ask my question, if that's okay. I really enjoyed the conversation, and I feel like you guys were really right on to forming this community that allows us to be our authentic self and, help students to build their confidence up and form that community going beyond. I think that's really crucial to the education community, to see each other, that we are each other's friends and we're gonna succeed together versus there's competition, because I don't believe in really competition is the right way of handling, because we're a species of community. And I look forward to a community that are accepting each other, like loving each other and acceptance, and allow us to be our authentic self without any judgments. And in order to do that, we have to be the change that we wish within the world. So thank you for that. And my question is that I am a non-African, but I would love to be part of the HBCU community, and I wanted to see how I could get involved and what age group are able to be involved with your community and assist.
Like, would you like to go to an HBCU? Is that what you're saying?
I'm sorry?
Would you like to attend an HBCU? Is that what you're saying?
I would like to get more information in how I could get involved if I'm a non-African student. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. I would like any other institution, I would say, what is your major? What do you want to major in? Because different schools have different expert level, different folks. Are right now at Prairie View, we have an excellent engineering program. We have an excellent architecture program. If you want to go into biomedical sciences, I would say Xavier. If you want to go into political science, you may end up at Howard. So it all depends on what your
I'm all about changing the world and making a difference in the world. And I'm currently a psychology major and pursuing MFT in clinical psychology. So I'm in a master program, and I would like to heal people.
Maybe you need to go finish your doctorate and go teach.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah.
You finish your master's there, get that doctorate, and start teaching. There you go.
Right.
It sounds good.
Because I think that's the key. You have a passion for helping people, bridging the divides. And I think that, once you finish your degree, like PJ said, keep going, get that other degree, and actually, what you just said, be that change that you see. Let the conditions of the world, let the things that you see, let that burn that fire inside of you to be that change. And I think you're going to get there. You got a great start.
Thank you. And is there any for other students who are interested in? Did it just apply to your institutions? I would like to know information so I could pass it on to other people if they're interested.
Absolutely. And the thing about it is, they don't necessarily look at race when you apply. You get what I'm saying? There's no, you have to send a photo or we need to figure out who you are. No, it's you apply just like anywhere. And the thing about it is, go and visit the schools so that you can actually see the culture for yourselves. For me, that was the key with me going to an HBCU. I visited the campus for myself. You know, I went to the campuses of NYU, Columbia, because I'm from New York, and I saw those schools, and I didn't see that community, that environment that I was looking for. But when I went to actually visit those schools, and they had the curriculum that I was looking for, but I actually felt the culture and I felt the love at those schools. That's what actually drew me in. So I would definitely recommend that you actually go visit. And I think that you'll
I would look forward to it.
say.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you guys.
Welcome.
Thanks.
Lisa, you've been trying to jump in, and then we'll wrap this now.
I just put it in the chat that you
okay.
might want to check out the BSU.
Okay. A big round of appreciation for Dr. Jefferson and Dr. Washington for joining us for this conversation. A quick announcement, and we usually wrap up 5-ish and then hang out. If you want to hang out for another 15-20 minutes, we can do that. If you got to go, you got to go. Join us next week. Our undergraduate studies chair, and she's also got some higher position like czar of undergraduate studies or something like that, Mi-Hee Hyun, and Anna Kwong, one of our planning team for Messy Conversations, and a guest will be talking about AAPI hate, Asian American Pacific Islander hate. And so that'll be our focus next week. We encourage you to join us next Monday at 4 o'clock. Thank you.
Thank you all. We appreciate having us.
And it was a pleasure.
Hi, sorry, am I the one who's left? Cool, thank you. Well, I'm a first quarter student and I want to get involved with our campus, so this is my first involvement. But I think I will be in touch with Miss Lisa about that. But if you guys have any suggestions to me on how to do so, I look forward to hear from it. Anybody has suggestions for me, or if you guys would, how would you guys get involved with your campuses, or any tips?
Coming to these first.
Perfect.
Yeah.
I'm doing something right. Okay, perfect. I will do that.
Need some friends here perhaps that you can connect with at school, at your campus, and we can try to connect you as well. And you know, there's a lot of events. I know that some of them might be posted on the website. Some of them might come to your overloaded email box already, I'm guessing. So we try to send events to students' emails. That doesn't always fly very well, but we want you to be involved. And if you have ideas about how we could be more involved in the community, that's what we want to do. And I think all of the conversation that we've had today is really, you know, it's true to our values, but we haven't lived it as well. And we need to do that legacy piece here more. We talk a lot about who are the characters that graduated before us, but we don't connect the history to all of these topics we've held in Messy Conversations. So I think, you know, if you're faculty over the last year and a half, you've been, especially white people, you've been grappling with how is each of our fields, you know, tied to all of this, and what can we learn from the history that we didn't learn, that we need to learn, and how can we make the changes accordingly given what we know now. And so I think there's a lot of work that could be done on that side of it, but also finding people that share your values here is at least the way I went, and I think it's an important part of making friends at school.
I have a question for Patrick and Justin, and I'm making a generalization, I realize that, but I'm curious about the political culture of HBCUs, and is it sort of a neoliberal, let's get in and get ours, or is there a more radical or progressive arm to the politics? And I know that's a generalization.
And I would say this, as having worked in administration, is like most institutions, and people, you know, we hear on TV all the time, oh, these liberal bastions of blah, blah, blah. administration at most institutions are fairly conservative.
Very.
When the president,
Yes.
provost, deans, they're all conservative because they worried about donors, they worried about,
Right.
upsetting the governor, they're all, so Prairie View is a very old institution. It's fairly conservative. My alma mater, Xavier University, the what do you call the place? The nun stay, because it was started by the Sisters of the Blessed
Not
Sacrament.
the monastery.
We have
Convent.
nuns still
The
on
convent. The
campus.
convent. Yes.
Yeah, the convent is on campus.
Right.
So of course it's very, but freedom of expression, freedom of thought is alive and well, because we got people that very activists, very involved, very radical folks. But that's always that push and pull on the college campus. But as far as administration goes, our administration here is extremely conservative. They don't want us to rock the boat at all. But then you
that's
got
Hampton
the fact
University.
members, you got these students. I mean, they doing all kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's Hampton University to a T. It's funny, like I said, they prepare you for corporate America, Fortune 500 companies. They are one of the most conservative places that you can be. But at the same time, it's like with the changing times and the climate, that brings up that conversation to see how we can prevent certain things from happening and how we can mentor the next generation so that they don't have to deal with the same things we have to. But yeah, PJ was dead on. Administratively,
I want to make clear that up. Not conservative as far as right-wing ideology.
Right.
Conservative as y'all get out the street making noise, like just shh, be quiet a little bit. Right. Because our president Ruth Simmons, she's on TV all the time talking about injustice and stuff like that. She's out there. She's talking about it. She just don't want a lot of stuff going on and mess up, when she has to walk her donor through. She don't want, us in the street doing a lot of stuff at that point. But not conservative from a, liberal conservative standpoint. But there's administrations like things calm. They just want things calm.
Right.
I have another question, but I don't know how to ask that fully. I was talking to a member in our community, and we started talking about, how people who are in lower income communities and who don't have opportunities a lot, and who join some groups that it's not really good, maybe like gang kind of group. And he was kind of had a friend who was actually in those kind of group associated with that, and he was educating me about how these groups are hard to get out of, that if they tend to start you early on from the age, and it's harder for them to get out when they want to get out, when they feel like they don't want to associate with this group. They can't get out because they get peer pressure to stay in, or if they start to get out, they will kill them. So I wanted to ask, how could we assist those kind of communities, do you guys think? I know it's a tough, these are questions that I ask, it's very tough questions because not all of us can think of those, or I think just talking about it and putting our minds to with one another, I think we could come up with some solutions that we could.
Well, I'll say this. growing up in New York, I grew up in Queens, one of the 5 boroughs. I grew up in the city. So gang life and gang activities was something that I saw all the time. And the issue that a lot of these young boys have is that, they don't see a lot of opportunity for advancement. If the gang members or the drug dealers are the ones with the fancy trinkets or things, they're the ones that they're going to look to. So one thing why I'm a part of a mentoring organization with Dr. Jefferson, the 100 Black Men, it's to just show young boys or young people in the community a different way, a different level of success, right? So because you have to balance out what you see. So, and it just doesn't have to be men, it's anybody in the community. When you see with the Boys and Girls Club or different groups, when you see young boys or young men of any ethnicity, that they need guidance and direction, sort of be that, what they see is what they be, is our model. Be that representation to those kids so that they can understand that I don't only have to do this, there are other options. And then once you get a community of people that think like you together, you guys can help get those gangs out of your community, work with local law enforcement, help get after school programs and mentoring programs established for those kids that can give them a different way out. So that's going to take community activism for sure, to get a group together of lay people, law enforcement, different things like that to help you out with that.
And this kind of off the topic, but I just want to say it's as somebody that's been in and around gang culture, if you look like you have something going on and you can kind of get out the hood, you'd be surprised how supportive your other partners would be. Because some of the older guys kind of made me go home at certain times when certain stuff was about to go home. They say, look, you got a talent, you got a skill, go home. And they would make us go home. And I worked in Compton Watts in South Central for almost 20 years. And it's still like, if you were good at something, if you were smart and they knew it, they would kind of run you off the block. You were good in basketball, football, you had a talent, they would run you home. So it's a very complicated thing, because gang culture is very, very complicated. But if you be cats that were in the streets doing stuff they shouldn't have been doing, help get me to where I need to go. Some respect.
Thank you. And they won't force the kid anymore if they're still.
But you're talking about a million different things and a million different scenarios, a million different people. Things, it depends on where you're from, who your friends are, who your family are. But and like I say, from me growing up, I got in a little trouble at one time, and they saw I had some talent, and they said, "Now you ain't finna do X, Y, and Z." And it's called getting chastised if you're in the street. And so I got chastised, and they made me go home.
And each situation is different, like PJ said. Work with one kid at a time, work with one situation at a time, and try to make that difference in that one situation. Because like he said, it could be anything with 5 different groups of people, but just take that one. If you know of any situations, take that one and try to work that one situation. And I think that you'll be fine. Because you want to try to save everyone, you can't. But like I say, start with that one. If you know of an incident or a case, work with that one. And then once you see that you can actually do it, you progress from there.
Perfect. Thank you, Justin. And thank you, guys, awakened me to some point of views and how I could approach this situation. So thanks.
All right. Any left for me, Jess?
Well, I just want to say to NICU, I sent you some information and a flyer for the meeting, so you could I apologize, Dr. Gills. I just sent you a quick email and some information for the upcoming BSU meeting, so you can talk about it a little bit further. And usually, even on this call, there's graduates that are there. Daniel Hammond was one of the presidents at the Seattle campus for the BSU in Seattle. So usually there's other graduates there as well, and other people that might be from your same program. So if you get the chance to attend, that would be awesome.
I just wanted to say before we end, thank both of you. When Patrick told me I got this, and I knew you would, and Justin, is great meeting you. The information is critical. I had one student said, "Oh, that's really interesting. You're going to have conversations about HBCUs." I didn't necessarily expect that in a messy conversation. And I think, our role in terms of the planning committee and our engagement with others in the Antioch community is to make sure we can help make the connections to the history and culture of African Americans and our engagement. HBCUs have played such a vital role. And recently, I came across some research that, after during the Nazi regime in the 1930s, where Jews weren't welcomed. I mean, Roosevelt, he turned the tide a little later, but they weren't welcome. And one of the places they were welcome, Jews, were at the historically Black colleges. They were able to be hired as professors, earn a living, bring their families, and made a great impact on their students, and they were impacted also about the culture of African Americans and living under Jim Crow. And believe you me, white folks did not consider the Jews part of their community. And I think in the news now, I think Patrick and I were talking about with Nicole Hannah-Jones, how she ended up at Howard. It's very interesting. I think there's some cross connections. And today, I'm just gratified that both of you were able to represent so well that history and legacy. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
On
Thank you.
behalf
for
of
having
all
us.
of us.
We appreciate it.
Nice. Appreciate it. Have a great day, guys, and stay safe. Thanks for the conversation.
Nice to meet you, Nikki.
Everybody.
You guys.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you. Thank
Take
you.
care.
Pleasure. Thank you. Just real quick, Dr. Elaine, did you tell me you send me something to be aware of, or?
Oh, I think that was Jacqueline
Oh,
for the BSU.
Yes,
She
it
said,
was me.
yeah.
oh, thank you
Yeah,
so very
it
much.
was me. Did you get it?
I don't think so. May I ask, where did you send it my way?
I saw the link in the
I
chat.
that.
You look up in the
It's in the
chat.
There, I sent it to N. Musaldi. Is it
Yes.
Musaldi?
Oh, you sent it to my email.
To your email. Yes, I hope that was correct. Through Antioch.
I really appreciate you. Let me real quick check. Sorry, guys, I'm keeping you guys in the line.
No worries.
Thank you again for all you guys' time. Appreciate it.
Elaine, that nice job. They were great.
Oh,
Yes,
they were on it. I forgot to remind, some of you have seen my son. I think some of you have met him. He's a graduate of Clark Atlanta U, actually. And while they didn't necessarily touch on that aspect of the, I think in some sense Justin did, because many parents feel a lot more that their young people are supported at the HBCUs, especially during this era that we find ourselves in. And not only, and I think Patrick spoke to that about wanting them to succeed, be successful, but also actually finding some comfort that they may not get not as much harm in some of these other universities. And I remember both of my sons graduated from a private school in Santa Monica. And I know my son was one of the first that went to HBCUs because some of the parents didn't think that was, after going to that private school, going to HBCUs were not quite what they felt was acceptable. And I think Patrick touched on that. Also, it just so happens my son knew better, but I think some of the young people felt the same way, that, because of what that misinformation and the miseducation. And, we've been talking a lot about, we heard a lot about the, one of the reasons I wanted Maxine to be involved in Messy Conversations, what's going on with the crime bill and other things. Some of this money was going to be going to HBCU because they've been playing games for a number of years with these HBCUs. Even Trump was hollering about what he did and turned out not necessarily true. So it's had a big impact, and I'm really happy that we were able to have both of them on today. We didn't I think the numbers had something